Having trouble figuring out what the truth is? I do not blame you. Truth is hard to find, and lies are everywhere, especially now. So, where do you go to get the truth? You won't find it in the headlines. You won't find it at school or university. Politicians won't tell you the truth. Pastors just tell you part of it, if he has any of it to tell you. And then there are those who try to tell the truth, but wind up mixing in the lies that they believe. That doesn't leave us very much to work with, but there is one thing that we can do. Look at the verifiable truth. Oh, and we'll also be looking at John D. Rockefeller, Chinese food, and what's up with the Drudge Report. Welcome to the Shockcast. I'm John Little, recording after midnight in southern Taiwan during the wee hours of Monday, September 21st, 2020. That's the last day of summer. Before going on, hit like, click subscribe, and whack that little bell. It helps, really. Also, subscribe to the Shock Letter for free at theshockletter.com. Find my posts on Facebook and Twitter, and the links for all of that and more are in the description section below and in the main article on omegashark.com. Please do not forget to pray for this ministry. I need God's direction every day to say and write what needs to be said and written. And now, let's get to today's main topic. Stop looking for truth in all the wrong places. For as long as I can remember, I've lived by a very simple rule. Really? Prove it. It's a useful rule to live by, but it drives almost everyone crazy. I think that I have successfully driven parents, teachers, pastors, siblings, neighbors, friends, enemies, Asians, Americans, conservatives, liberals, Jews, Muslims, Christians, atheists, agnostics, and yes, even Mrs. Little. Completely nuts. The poor woman is stuck with me, but she has a sense of humor, so she's fine. Unfortunately, there's a limit to how far you can go with a prove-it philosophy. But so far, it has kept me from believing the pre-tribulation rapture and the theory of evolution. It pulled me out of the Republican Party and the Council on Foreign Relations, and yes, I was a member of both. It helped me see that the official explanation for 9/11 was wrong. It's why I didn't spend much time with the John Birch Society. And it's why I've never believed that the King James Version of the Bible is free from error. Seriously. Anglican translators. What part of that was ever a good idea? I've always been annoyed with the errors in the King James Version, but I've had trouble finding a translation of the Bible that is also without error. They all have mistakes, every single one, which is frustrating. But I'm getting off topic. Now, where was I? Can you find the truth just by demanding proof? That's where things get a little tough. I can absolutely prove that the Earth is a globe if I want to spend some money on a plane ticket. But I cannot prove with my own eyes that the U.S. landed astronauts on the moon. I can prove that the explanation for 9/11 does not fit the facts, but I cannot prove who was behind it. Real proof is a very, very hard thing to find in a world that demands that we believe more things than we can prove, at least that we can prove with our own eyes. Most of the time, we are forced to accept someone else's account or take a wait-and-see approach. Giving an idea a Gallic shrug is probably the best that we can do if we cannot find real proof for a certain thing. Unfortunately, some of us are less willing to take que sera, sera for an answer. They want to know. Unfortunately, when you have too many people looking for answers to the inexplicable, you get tellers of tall tales who are more than ready to give all kinds of silly and outrageous reasons for why certain things have happened. Over the years, I have been told that the Earth is flat, lizard people and hybrids rule the world, big explosions are a nuclear weapon, the rapture will be next year, the Antichrist will appear the next month, Kissinger, Nixon, Obama, and Donald Trump are the Antichrist, the Jews control the world, the Jesuits rule behind the scenes, the Illuminati are the real world rulers, The Freemasons rule the world, the CIA controls the world, Mossad controls the U.S. government, The world is warming and we are all going to bake to death and drown. The world will end if Trump wins. The world will end if Biden wins. The world will end if Hillary Clinton wins. The King James Version is perfect. The universe is billions of years old. God doesn't exist, but we might be living in a computer simulation. America's founding fathers were Christian. Islam is the religion of peace. Inflation is impossible under a gold standard. We have plenty of oil. And Chinese food is wonderful. And every single one of those is completely wrong, especially that last one, but more on that later. How did all those crazy ideas take hold in the minds of so many people? They forgot core principles of wisdom and the foundation of human history. The theory of evolution is really bad science, but very few biologists will agree if they want to keep their jobs. There's not a single verse in the Bible that describes a pre-tribulation rapture, but very few pastors will agree if they want to keep their jobs. The earth isn't flat, but very few flat earth podcasters and YouTubers will take a direct flight from Santiago, Chile to Sydney, Australia, if they want to keep their podcasts. And we do not have plenty of oil. But you won't get very many geologists to admit that since they like their jobs. Yes, that's right. People like their jobs, so people won't tell you the truth if it means losing their nice paycheck. And we call that greed. Oh, and there are enough stupid people willing to listen to a fun hoax which has given persons of uncertain parentage a steady job. Stupid people will always fall for a well-spun story, especially if the hoax is big and juicy like the one about the reptilians and the hybrids. I think that reptilians are just so adorable. Hybrids, too. Unfortunately, it gets a lot less cute when you find that only 84% of Americans know that the Earth is a sphere. The rest of the American population either think that the Earth might possibly be flat or are completely convinced that it is. And that is the dumbest thing that I have ever heard. But it isn't the only example of utter stupidity that crisscrosses the minds of men and women. The kinds of stupid theories flowing into my inbox are utterly amazing. I just love the one where physicists deny the existence of God, but speculate that we might be living inside of a computer. Right. Scientists are morons too. The proliferation of utter stupidity like this is proof that people are no longer able to discern the difference between the truth and a lie. The government says that the earth is warming and people believed them. The mainstream media claims that cops are indiscriminate killers of blacks and people believe them. Preachers taught without a shred of evidence that all Christians are going to be raptured before the Great Tribulation and people believed them. Officials claimed that World Trade Center Building 7 collapsed because of burning carpet and furniture, the first time in history, and people believed them. It is time to stop listening to nonsense and believing it. Stop believing everything you read and see. Stop believing sensationalist garbage being spewed out by people trying to sell you something. There are no Nazis under the ice. Space lizards do not rule the earth. The Jews are not plotting to take over the world. They just want to be left alone. And the bankers are not taking over the world because they are Satanists. They're doing it because they want more money. Yes, Satan is running around causing trouble. Yes, there are conspiracies. Yes, the Illuminati, Freemasons, Bilderbergers are conspiring against us. Yes, these morons wish to take over the world. No, and I mean this, none of that matters. The moronic, insane ideas that people are throwing out there to explain what is happening are just that. Moronic and insane. And the insanity is making it impossible for you to see the truth. And yes, I mean that. Stupid ideas block smart facts. Worse, even if the latest insane theory was true, it changes nothing. We need to all understand that none of us are going to defeat the New World Order. It's not going to happen. That ship sailed a long time ago. If our brothers and sisters in Christ had kept their robes clean, if they had been faithful to their spouses and not murdered their babies, if they had given up pornography and lived pure lives, the New World Order would not be winning. But because our churches have become dens of iniquity, we will lose our world. We need to stop hunting for Satanists and start looking in the mirror. Stop losing your mind and jumping at shadows. I understand that scary stuff is happening, but listening to lying liars is not helping the situation. Here, let me give you a recent personal example. Thursday night, I rewatched a video by James Corbett about the rise of John D. Rockefeller and the oil industry, because I wanted to show how the rise of the oil industry created the modern banking system. But the video was so full of fallacies and unsupported arguments that I lost count before I was halfway through. Yet, the average person watching that video would not see those errors and would assume that Corbett was able to back up every statement with hard research. And this isn't the first time that I've caught James Corbett playing fast and loose with the truth. If you watch or listen to James Corbett enough, you will be poisoned. What I don't know is whether Corbett is deliberately twisting the truth or is so twisted himself that he cannot see the lies that he's producing. Seriously, I don't know. By the way, if you want to know where Corbett might have gotten his twisted ideas and twisted philosophy, you should know that he is a graduate of Michel Chossudovsky's School of the Jews Are Behind Everything. If you believe and read what Chossudovsky's global research website says for long enough, you also have been poisoned. Whether he means well or not, James Corbett is just one of many examples of sloppy thinking, irrational bias, and lazy research. And I'm amazed at the willingness of viewers to suspend critical thinking when someone like Corbett comes along with his polished dialogue and deceptive assumptions. I thought for a moment about going through that Rockefeller video and laying out the logical errors that Corbett was making, but there are better things to do. But you might not be a James Corbett fan. You might not have fallen for the ridiculous ideas of Steve Quayle, Daniel Holdings, or Doug Hagman. Pat yourself on the back if you have avoided the crazy train. But let's step a little closer to home. Is your pastor telling you all the truth that he knows? How much truth does your pastor actually know? I've been spending some time thinking about the two armies that are commanded by the Antichrist. And I very quickly realized that none of our pastors ever talk about the Antichrist needing an army, let alone two. Why are our pastors not telling us stuff like this? The way that I keep hearing Christians talk about the Antichrist is that he somehow springs up out of nowhere and convinces everyone that he's a really cool dude. The problem with that thought is that the Bible describes the Antichrist differently. When he rises, he will need to knock down 3 of the 10 kings without a kingdom, Daniel 7:8. That just by itself shows that the Antichrist needs to struggle hard to win. The Bible goes on to describe the Antichrist as having an army and needing to use it to stamp out opposition. That's right, the Antichrist has opposition, lots of it, even though he still wins. Yet every 10-pot theologian describes the Antichrist as taking over the world effortlessly. And I am surprised that so few Christians understand the opposition that the Antichrist will face. Why are so many Christians so ignorant? It is time for Christians to wake up and start thinking critically about what they see and hear. Stop believing everything that your pastor says. Don't believe everything that I say. Start asking why things are happening now. Ask why the elites have been so willing to throw away the basis of their power, the economy, and ask why the elites are doubling down on climate change when there's no proof that it's changing the way that they claim. Yes, there is greed involved, but there's more than just greed, because they are actively destroying their own wealth with these foolish lockdowns, and that leaves only one other emotion that is driving the elites: fear. I made that point a couple weeks ago in an article I wrote, "The Desperate Gamble: Why the Elites Are Trying to Lock Us Down." You can also find it on YouTube. These lockdowns are destroying the new world order that they have tried to create. So they would not be doing this and pressuring others to lock down if they weren't afraid. And while it's possible that they really are afraid of a virus, I find that highly unlikely. They know, yes, really know, that these lockdowns are doing far more damage to their plans than any virus ever could. They know this. So why are they doing it? I think that I have the answer, and the core of that answer is the same one that I've been talking about for a long time. Greed, the love of money. In this case, it's this desire to keep the money that they have and not lose it. And I believe that it will be this desire that will cause 7 of the 10 kings without a kingdom, Daniel 7:8, to accept the deal that the man of fierce countenance offers. Remember what Paul said to Timothy, quote, "For the love of money is the root of all evils. Some people in reaching for it have strayed from the faith and stabbed themselves with many pains." Close quote. 1 Timothy 6:10, the New English Translation. It really is as simple as that. Trying to assert any other motives that we cannot prove is foolish. True, some of them probably do have darker motives, but the love of money is the simplest, most accurate description of why the elites will band together to take over the world and then hand it over to the Antichrist. They aren't lizards, Jewish conspirators, or alien hybrids. They just love money. It's that simple. It doesn't require that they sacrifice little girls to Satan, even though some might do that. They don't need to be members of the Freemasons, even though some might be. They certainly don't need to be Jewish. And as I've always said, anything is possible. But you need to notice what the Bible says about all these details. Nothing. Beyond their obvious greed, there is nothing that would motivate them to give their power to the Antichrist, except maybe their hatred of the whore who rides the beast, which is described in Revelation. The Bible doesn't even indicate that you should be digging too deeply into the evil of these people. In fact, probably just the opposite. Quote from the Bible, "For your obedience is come abroad unto all men. I am glad, therefore, on your behalf. But yet I would have you wise unto that which is good, and simple concerning evil." Romans 16:19, the KJV. I actually think that the KJV gets this more correct than most of the other translations. Paul is telling us in this verse that we should be smart about goodness and not so smart about evil. The Bible does not describe the Illuminati, human hybrids, Jewish conspiracies, Freemasons, or anything else. And if the Bible doesn't mention that it's important, then maybe it isn't, especially if it's impossible to verify. I'm not saying to ignore the obvious, but some of what people talk about is, well, probably not useful. The point is to stop believing outrageous lies and start demanding proof. You might even want to learn to identify the gigantic pie-in-the-sky assumptions that people make as they seek to convince you of their viewpoint and maybe sell you something. You don't need a fabulous explanation for what is happening. You just need to understand greed. I know that this flies in the face of what people have told you, and the idea of being simple concerning evil goes against human nature. It certainly goes against mine. I get that. But most of those who claim to understand the great conspiracies are far less informed than you might realize, and many of their quote-unquote facts are merely overheated assumptions. There's a verse in Proverbs that I think applies here. Quote, "Buy the truth and sell it not. Also wisdom and instruction and understanding." Close quote. Proverbs 23:23, also the King James Version. The truth is worth everything, but you need to make sure that you are getting real truth and not the fake stuff. That is what most people are selling, and that means asking for proof. I stand by my personal rule, and I think that you should live by something like it. Put it in your own words if you want, but I hope that it's clear that we need to require proof from people before believing what they say. We really need to stop looking for truth in all the wrong places. Now, I mentioned that Rockefeller video by James Corbett. The errors and assumptions are so sneaky that I really don't want to be a part of passing it on. Watch it if you want, but you're going to have to look for it. I don't want to be a part of it. But I do have a few observations that I believe to be important. But here's some background. John D. Rockefeller was the richest man that the modern world has ever known. And he got there by being in on the ground floor of the oil revolution. He is literally the personification of the power and wealth that petroleum brought to our civilization. The fact that he wanted to be rich and got what he wanted is actually not very important. The important point is that he was a very smart man who was at the right place in the right time to help launch an industry and change the world. There is no indication that whatsoever that he was a Satanist or even a particularly wicked person. In fact, he was a rather faithful member of the Erie Street Baptist Mission in Cleveland, Ohio. He tithed regularly, and some claim that he never cheated anyone. I doubt that last part, but who knows? As I've often said, anything is possible. And whatever you might say about his ethics, he did give glory to God, which is why God might have granted him a long 97-year life. At age 86, he is recorded as saying this as a summary of his life, quote, "I was early taught to work as well as play. My life has been one long happy holiday, full of work and full of play. I dropped the worry on the way, and God was good to me every day." Close quote. Yes, I know that it's possible that his public relations people helped create this image of a pious man. But I also know that his enemies could not claim that he was unfaithful to his wife. They could not claim that he drank or did drugs. In fact, the only thing that they really could accuse him of is becoming the richest man in the world. I say all that to make the point that it wasn't evil that created the petroleum revolution. It wasn't a Satanist or one of the robber barons of the day. He wasn't a Freemason. It doesn't sound like he was an Illuminist. He just seemed very good at doing what he did. Having said that, someone put an obelisk near his grave, not a cross, an obelisk. That's a bad sign. Literally a bad sign. I know that your wishes about what kind of funeral you want can be overruled by your heirs. I know someone who wanted a Masonic funeral but didn't get it because his daughter said absolutely not. Whatever John D. Rockefeller might have been, and no, I'm not saying that he was a good guy, we know a lot about his children and grandchildren. They were and are evil. Something that the love of money does to kids. No surprise. Again, why am I talking about Rockefeller? Because he represented the fantastic explosion of wealth and productivity from oil that helped create the banking system. The banking system that we have today. Yes, I know about the rise of the European banks set up by the Barings, the Rothschilds, the Barenbergs, the etc. But that was nothing compared to what they became after the oil boom of the late 1800s. Oil created more wealth and power than anything that the world had ever seen. And it happened just at the right time when coal-fired innovation was pushing at the boundaries of technology. The first industrial revolution was fueled by coal, and it created tremendous innovation, a rapidly growing economy, and an infrastructure that the oil-powered second industrial revolution would build on. And all of that wealth had to go somewhere, and that somewhere was the banking industry. Banks exploded in size and power, and they owed their wealth and influence to coal and oil. But without all of that energy and the clever innovations in their use, there is no way that the banks would have ever become as powerful as they are today. I know that I'm glossing over a lot of detail, but the main point needs to be understood by everyone. The banking system might have had its roots in the Renaissance and the banking cartels that sprang up after the Protestant Reformation, but that was nothing compared to what coal and oil helped create centuries later. It was coal and oil that built the system that gave the banks their power. So what happens to the banks when coal and oil shrink? What happens to the governments that were beneficiaries of this tremendous outpouring of wealth? Well, just as banks and governments grew with the rise of wealth, they will shrink with the decline of wealth. But they will not shrink in the same way that they grew. They will grasp for every shred of power and wealth that they can squeeze out of the population and will dig bloody furrows through our society as their grasp fails. The banks and governments will fight to the blood-soaked bitter end. This is why peak oil and peak coal will do more than just damage the economy and our way of life. It will also directly damage and even destroy much of the banking system that we know today. And the bankers will do, and are doing, everything in their power to keep their power and wealth. Then every government that sees the threat to their own power and dominance will do the same. No one gives up power and wealth without a bitter fight. No one. They will steal, kill, and destroy anyone that they see as an obstacle to them. As energy declines, expect banks and governments to fight for what is left, and that battle will lead to the wars and rumors of wars that Jesus talked about. All of that is a key reason why the last days were always going to be horrible beyond belief. Okay, now for something completely different. In the list of the silly and outrageous, I included the greatness of Chinese food. And I could go on and on about why I consider Chinese food to be less than advertised. Growing up in Indiana, I thought that I knew what Chinese food was. My favorite Chinese restaurant was the Lotus Garden. I ate La Choy Chinese food and thought it was great. My wife tried to introduce me to the real thing while we were in the U.S., but I was obviously not paying attention. I was in love and still am. And I'm kind of clueless at the best of times. So when we moved to Taiwan in 2010, it finally dawned on me what I was getting into. Chinese food is terrible. Worse, I seem to be the only American on this island who feels that way. Every other expat thinks that the food here is awesome. Either that or there is something wrong with me, or something wrong with them, or both. Probably both. However, I'm beginning to suspect that crafty Taiwanese have been brainwashing expats into believing that chou tofu and kimchi are wonderful instead of a deadly, awful, poisonous, toxic affront to mankind. How I escaped this coordinated culinary assault is a mystery. And if you want to feel a bit of my horror, repeat these words after me. Pig blood cake. I kid you not. That's a part of authentic Chinese cuisine. And I have forbidden Mrs. Little from bringing any of that into our home, or chou tofu, or kimchi. But did I mention that she has a sense of humor? Yeah, you know how that worked out. So I bring to your attention the ultimate plot to dominate the world. A new world order is rising, attempting to corrupt and dominate the globe. And yes, it is a globe. Around the world, there is a Taiwanese coterie of chefs, secret agents of this new culinary order, who are beguiling the taste buds of the West with General Tso's chicken, beef chow mein, and chop suey. Little do ignorant Westerners know that what comes next is chou tofu, kimchi, and pig blood cake. You might think that the satanic conspiracies of the West are awful, but nothing beats the chou of chou tofu. And yes, the chou is truly powerful. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, do your research. How ironic to remember telling someone as I was getting ready to marry Mrs. Little that I thought that Chinese food was great. How foolish I was. How naive. And Mrs. Little's response to my feelings about Taiwanese food? It was your idea to come here. True enough. I was the one who wanted to come to Taiwan, and I actually like it here. How about that for irony? I just don't like the food. Give me a cheeseburger and some New Zealand ice cream, and I'll be fine. Okay, I've had it. I try very hard to stay away from tainted journalism, either from the right or the left. Jingoism gives me a rash, and party politics makes me want to throw up. I just want good facts. I'm not even asking for good analysis. I know where to get that if I need it. I just want a site with some timely headlines. That's it. I don't have very high expectations of Matt Drudge. I didn't, so I was able to tolerate some of the garbage headlines that have crept into his website. But now I've hit my limit. He clearly is suffering a bad case of Trump derangement syndrome, so it's time to bail on the Drudge Report. I don't know what happened to him. No one does. Most of what we have is speculation. The person who seems to be asking the right questions is Paul Joseph Watson.
What happened to Matt Drudge? Did Drudge sell DrudgeReport.com, or did he sell out his principles? That's a question that's been raging in conservative circles for months and was highlighted back in July by Tucker Carlson.
If you've seen the Drudge Report recently, you know that it has changed dramatically, 180 degrees. Matt Drudge is now firmly a man of the progressive left. At times, his site is indistinguishable from the Daily Beast or any other woke propaganda outlet posing as a news company. But the question remains, what happened to Matt Drudge?
That's a clip from his video, What Happened to Matt Drudge? So while we wait for whatever truth there is to come out on Matt Drudge, I'm on the lookout for a site that throws out timely headlines without the political garbage that everyone seems interested in. Right now, Citizen Free Press seems good. No, scratch that. I'm sorry. CFP is not a good replacement for Drudge. Whenever I see the word free, I know that I'll be seeing articles on ammo, precious metals, and Trump for life. The same goes for words like patriot, Christian, and truth. They're good words, and I'm not against guns, gold, or even the Donald. The thing that I despise is hiding behind slogans and thinking that they will solve the catastrophe that is rolling down upon us. A lot of people are going to die over the next few years, and it will happen for reasons that the left and the right do not understand. So please, just give me the facts. That's it for this Shotcast. Again, hit like, click subscribe, and whack that little bell. And please, share this video or the MP3. After you have done all that, leave a comment. I like seeing what you have to say about what was said here. Your input is welcome. Then help keep Omega Shock and the Shotcast alive. There's a link below that can help you do that. I did this for free for 8 years. Now I can't. Also, subscribe to The Shock Letter at theshockletter.com and read my books for free. You do not want to get caught by what is coming.